Good morning, everyone. Welcome to ProSig Training Center. Today's topic is IoT security firmware reversal. So today we are going to specifically talk about IoT device security. I hope most of you know about what IoT is. IoT stands for few of you who do not have an idea about. IoT is Internet of Things. Well, anything you see which is connected to internet or a network basically, and giving data to a cloud or a server. For example, it could be your smart fridge in your home, or it could be your AC which is giving a feedback, or it could be your CCTV camera in your home which is connected to internet, so that you can actually watch what's going on in your home when you're not there on any mobile app or a software or a website, any web application as such. So basically, that's an IoT device. So why do we care about IoT security? Well, future, or we can already say that most of the homes today, we are having at least 4 or 5 connected devices, which includes our mobile phones. And slowly this has increased in Indian homes, especially even if you take an average Indian home, we have smart TVs, isn't it? That's a smart device. TVs once upon a time was just you know read-only devices where they receive signal from a satellite and then they used to display input and output. That's it. But user did not have any control over the programs whatever he is watching, unless and until he can change the channels. That's it. That is the only control he had. But today it's different completely. We have smart TVs in our home, and these TVs are connecting to different web applications as well, like Android, or depending upon whichever smart TV you have chosen to. Now, why IoT security again here? We started with TV. We are not going to stop with the TV. We are going to have this connectivity going on further. Yeah, it will be going further. Absolutely. And that's about India apart. Apart from India, in developed countries like European countries or US, they already are using these smart devices, uh, maybe since a couple of years. Reason being, most of the time in India, we are family bounded people, so we live with the families, and if there are children in the family, uh, if we go to work, then there will be somebody elderly people who will be taking care of our kids, or because they are always with us. That's how Indian culture is, but not in European countries where they try to live a life independently. There are more nuclear families, so they completely depend upon this smart devices. So there is a huge spike of growth in in the smart devices every month. New smart devices are coming. There is a huge competition. There are huge number of startups which come with their own ideas, and to implement these ideas they need a smart device. Yeah, they build the smart device, and then they want to be ahead of others. So everyone want to be the first in the market, to capture the market. That's how entrepreneurship actually works. So IoT devices has been adapted by both consumer and enterprise. Is it like IoT devices was not there before? Yes, it was there before, but this was purely used by industries, like manufacturing industries, to monitor the speed of the motors, maybe, or temperature of certain liquid, maybe. Yeah, so for these things they may be using, or pressure or something like that. They may be using these things, but eventually they have come down to a consumer level market. Okay, so consumer level market, we have a lot of devices again here. As I told you, TVs, we have refrigerators, we will have even vacuum cleaners. They scan the entire home and then remember where exactly each room is and the obstacles, and they will clean up for you. Yeah. So what about security then? Yeah, functionality is really good. Smart devices are really smart. Okay, but what about security? So not enough or not a lot of research has been done compared to a traditional security domain for IoT. So here I have an excerpt from Mr. Billy Rios. He is a security researcher. Well, of course, he did a lot of research on many IoT devices, and one of the things he does is reverse engineering. He gets his hands on the firmware of the IoT device. He breaks into the firmware of IoT device and tries to find out secrets or hidden codes inside that firmware. And he found out something like this, whatever you are seeing here. Yeah, so you can actually see it says password is Bob the Builder. So yeah, he once was doing a research on a device called as a pacemaker. So this is a video from BBC.
Are you saying that what you've been able to do to this system could kill somebody?
Yeah, certainly.
Well, they said they have found a serious flaw in affecting widely used medical devices, which is like a firmware, sorry, a pacemaker.
So we're going to show how someone could remotely take over a programmer and essentially use the taking over of the programmer to reprogram and put essentially a virus on one of these pacemakers.
Yeah.
Are you saying that what you've been able to do to this?
So we're going to show how someone could remotely take over a programmer and essentially use the taking over of the programmer to reprogram and put essentially a virus on one of these pacemakers.
Well, basically, a pacemaker is a implant. It's a medically engineered device to for the heart patients or the people who are having cardiac problems. So this implant will maintain the heartbeat at a certain optimal level, and if there are any abnormalities or anomalies in that, then it has to give a feedback to the doctor so that he can provide an appropriate medicine. Now this implant has to be inside the body of a human, isn't it? So what it does is it has to send out message from the body to outside. Okay, some server, some kind of a wireless device. So he happened to hack into this pacemaker, and he was able to get the secret code. Get the secret code. It was embedded into the firmware, and he was able to inject an virus into that implant device so that that would send a fake messages to the server. So server would think actually because it is sharing the authentication is done because authentication was Bob Builder we have seen previously. So authentication is already done. So it would take any update that is given by the pacemaker. That's the issue. So
Windows and Microsoft already does this for all their software, right? So this is kind of a standard practice for software updates, and for some reason, this manufacturer just chooses not to do it.
Some people might look at your work and your presentation in particular as making this known to the public.
Right.
That's pretty dangerous, no?
So it's been over 18 months since we reported this to the manufacturer. I think at some point enough is enough, right? And so we made it pretty clear that at some point in the future, we were going to present this research somewhere. And I think that time's come.
yeah. So here he has reported this to the manufacturer called as Metronics, and they said they are not they considered this as a low risk for some of their own reasons, and they did not have any update for this yet. So this is the situation of IoT devices. And then there was one distributed denial of service attack done on a hosting provider in the Europe in year 2016 September, which is considered to be one of the biggest distribution denial of service attack, wherein the hackers group, they used 150,000 hacked IoT devices. They used this vulnerability in the IoT devices, and then they hacked into these devices. They use these devices as zombies to attack a particular target, which was in this case a hosting service provider. And when they measured the peak of the attack, it was nearly 1 terabit per second. This is all because of low security IoT devices. So if you look at the IoT landscape, it's really huge. There are many players involved in this IoT landscape. For example, if you want to implement IoT or something smart inside a vehicle. So for vehicles or automobiles, there are many companies which will provide, for example, Tesla or Ford or Delphi. So mostly the goal is, ideally the goal is simple. They want you to know if you have enough fuel to ride to a destination, or which is the next fuel station which it can take. That's smart. That is smartness. Remotely switching on and switching off your car. Okay, that could be a smartness, right? And then it is also going to diagnose your car for any type of a problem, maybe a major issue like a braking problem or an oil leak or anything like that, automatically, and it is going to give you. That's a smart thing. And then again, for home automation, we have seen a lot of home automation equipment is being manufactured. Few of them are Honeywell and Samsung, and for sensing as well, for kitchens. For kitchens, we have automatic coffee making machines as well these days. All right, and personal variables, everyone know. Every time you have a festival or anything like that, then the Mi Band or some other brand will come up with their own variable, which with improvements. So last year we have seen only heart beating, and then pedometers were included. Now this time we see there is a lot of improvement in the smart devices. They are also including little bit of workouts, and they are going to calculate some calories and I'm going to tell you. And even oximeter is also included these days because of this current pandemic, whatever is going on. So and again, the point I wanted to make here is it's not just one person who is making this. There are many players who are involved in this one. Everyone has their own idea, their own implementation. So they don't, it's not like a consortium where everyone will speak and they'll follow one same rule. Everyone has their own rules. Okay. So security is a big issue here. No one is working together here. Everyone is working individually, and usually they are focusing on their own products, obviously. So what is the current state of IoT security? So if you go to websites like Shodan.io, which is considered to be the search engine of IoT of things, then you will see there are huge number of devices which are connected to the internet and are open for someone to actually get to them. Yeah. So let me show you an example of that here. So this is Shodan website. You just beta.shodan.io. So I'm going to show you all the devices, which have this port number 3389 and connected to the internet. For example, here you can see there is some device in Kakinada with this IP address. You can see the screenshot. Some plant, manufacturing plant, and this one is today is 9th and it says 9:38. I don't know the timing here. Yeah, but that's a camera you have, and you can see somebody's home CCTV connected directly to the internet, and I think so it's some classroom in Mysore, and this is somebody's computer here which is connected, and they have connected this and they left it RDP open. So somebody, see, this is a server, it's not like any normal machine, it's a server, Windows Server 2008. Okay, so yeah, now once you know the device which is connected to the internet, if you want to if a hacker want to hack this device and do something, then all he has to do is find out the model number of the device, okay, and then go and search in a website for any weakness, for example cvdetails.com. Once he finds out a weakness in that device, so you can see the number of products which have vulnerabilities. Yeah, there you can see, for example, Windows 2008 server was connected. We just saw that, isn't it? So if I go to home again and I just have to search here Windows Server 2008, and we see so many vulnerabilities are already here. Okay, so here you can just have to select which type of vulnerability you want. Like you want to launch a denial of service attack or remote code execution attack, you can click on that. So the 2019 was a recent list. So here you can see execution flow. The score is 9.3, which is considered severe. Between the scale is usually between 1 to 10. So the more near the score is towards the 10, the more severe the vulnerability is. So this one is specifically 2008 server, and this is the vulnerability statistics. You can see here. Yeah, and a hacker would actually further go ahead and find out an exploit which is publicly available, usually exploitdb, exploitdb.com, or he can use Metasploit, sorry, Metapredator. Metapredator is for connectivity payload, and then Metasploit is for launching any type of an exploits here. So Metasploit, or you can search for an exploit here for Windows 2008, and you can proceed further and hack it. So that's how it is. That's a simple way. Uh, that's an easy way. All the resources are available on the internet to hack anything on the internet. So that's the current state of IoT security. Now, how do hackers think? How does a hacker think when he's trying to attack? First of all, the first and foremost thing a hacker would actually look into is what is the hack value. What is it I'm going to gain after I do all this pain, and I take all this pain and go and hack the device? What am I going to gain out of it? Am I going to learn something? Because learning, if you just want to learn hacking, you need CTF devices. That is, you go to vulnerhub.com, or you can even go to Hack the Box. There are many other portals where you can download a vulnerable, intentionally made vulnerable machines, and you can practice your hacking in your own laptop if you want to practice, isn't it? No, learning is there. So a hacker would actually look into that. Fine. So what am I going to achieve? Am I going to get any information which is valuable, or if I just want to destroy them? That could be one of the goals of the hackers, right? So the first job they do is to map the attack surface of IoT device. They just want to know how this IoT device would actually function. How it is designed to function. What are the components which are involved in it? Okay, so I'm figuring out what could go wrong with each component and planning the threat vector. So for example, this is the IBM model for Internet of Things. You can see here the person who is controlling is right below, and then he is using his mobile phone to control and using some app, and that app is connected to a cloud. Okay, the vendor, whichever vendor it is, and then it is connected to the internet, and from the internet it is connected to whichever smart hub. Like if you want to control a TV in your home, for example, there will be a smart hub in your own home which will be connecting so to the internet, and from internet to the cloud, and cloud to the app, and app to you. Now this is the chain or the entire process of your IoT architecture, basically IoT model you can say here. So many things are involved here. When there are too many things involved, or when there is a process which is involved, so every process will have some vulnerability. Some device will have, you know, some weakness. For example, your mobile app, maybe it has a malware. If you are buying a cheap mobile, okay, with old unpatched Android on it, right? Or it could be your cloud, whichever cloud you are using. It could be the vendor, whoever is storing. Maybe he misconfigured the uh, server on the cloud, right? Or the smart hub itself, whatever you have purchased is not having good firmware. So things can go wrong. And then mapping the attack surface for IoT devices. If you look at the uh, communication which is going on between this mobile application and the actual device, you see here, let's say for example, you take a smartwatch. Now this smartwatch will always be communicating with your mobile app via Bluetooth Low Energy or BLE. Why BLE is preferred? BLE is more efficient when compared to any other protocol. It consumes less battery. So even a coin battery, a 2025 CR battery, or even less than that, okay, a 3-volt battery would last for months if it is communicating via Bluetooth Low Energy. Okay, and then obviously you know mobile phone uses either network communication like 4G LTE cellular communication, or through Wi-Fi communicating using a REST APIs to the cloud or web dashboard to analyze the data. Not only that, now this cloud will be constantly communicating with the gateway via the internet, whatever you have in your home. Maybe you are having more than one IoT device. For example, you might have bulbs in your home, in each room, and all these bulbs are Philips bulbs which are connected to Philips hub. You can control all these bulbs from your mobile phone. That's a smart way of controlling the lighting in your home or home automation. Okay, so whenever the hubs want to speak to the devices, they have their own protocol, choice of protocols. Like for example, Zigbee or 6LoWPAN. PAN, by the way, is personal area network. So yeah, so these protocols, can these protocols be vulnerable? Yes, of course. Can someone sniff data whenever data is exchanged between these devices? Absolutely yes. Whenever there is a wireless exchange going on between these two devices, maybe for security you are encrypting the data, but at some point you will have to exchange or authenticate yourself. So in that authentication process, if the authentication process is not robust enough, like let's say for example, if you are exchanging keys between devices, if the exchange process itself is having some weakness, then that can be captured and it can be broken down. Or if you are using RSA, like private key and public key type of authentication mechanism here, even that can be broken, because some way the manufacturer will have to include a key in the device, and if someone is getting a firmware hands on the firmware of this device, that can be retrieved here. So existing vulnerabilities, yes, we have Philips Hue. So this is the hub I was talking about, and this is the smart bulb. Well, it had its own vulnerabilities. You can look at this document here. So there is one researcher, Dhanjani. So it is his work actually, his hack. He was successfully able to hack into this smart hub and was able to make a complete blackout by hacking into the hub. You can go and look into how he did it actually. And then baby monitors. Baby monitors are basically cameras with motion sensors. Whenever a baby is sleeping, okay, so they will not record anything or not send anything, just be calm. But motion sensor will be working. Whenever the baby moves too frequently, then it is going to start the camera and it is going to send a message to the parent saying that the baby is awake now. That's how it is. Now, what is the problem with this? Well, the problem is the manufacturer of these devices, they say like you can monitor your camera even from a web page. So if you open the web page, all you have to do is enter the serial number of this Philips device. Serial number is unique, right? But the problem was there was no authentication mechanism. So if someone will change the serial number of that Philips camera, then they will be able to watch even uh, other customers' cameras as well. That was a weakness, right? So today's topic is all about reversing the firmware. Reversing the firmware, you have to understand what exactly is firmware in the first place. Firmware is the combination of all the code which is running on the device. So almost all the embedded devices will have this firmware. Even our motherboard, the good old motherboard, if you want to change the hardware settings of any of the interfaces like network card or USB or anything like that, you will be logging into BIOS. So that's the firmware basically. Not only that, even your AC, it has its own firmware. A program will be there in the AC, isn't it? So almost all the embedded devices will have this firmware. So what does firmware contain? Some important components, three important components. One is the bootloader, second one is the kernel and the file system and other resources. Okay, now if it is a router in your home, a router in your own home has its own firmware. That is the reason you are able to configure the router by logging into the router. All you have to do is type the IP address of the router. It will prompt you with the username and password. So when it is prompting you with the username and password, basically it is running a HTTP or HTTPS service. So where are this software inside your router? Well, all these are again in the firmware of your device. So bootloader is a program which is used for helping the device do a self-diagnosis of its hardware and report if any failures. Kernel is the core of the engine of the device. The basic algorithm or logic of that entire device is kernel. File system is the way these bits and bytes are arranged so that they can be accessed easily by the configurator, whoever is configuring it, network configuration by network engineer or whoever is doing it. Now, how is getting access to the firmware useful for IoT security? Well, basically, most of the firmwares will have their own hidden secrets because these devices are automated devices. Then they don't have to actually involve any user action here. For example, a pacemaker would not prompt for a password, isn't it? A pacemaker is something which is inside the body. How can it prompt a password? It has to automatically authenticate itself. That means there is something inside that firmware which is hidden and it is getting authenticating automatically. All the hacker will have to do is find out what is that hidden thing. How is it able to authenticate to the hub or to the server or whatever you can call it as. So these device vendors, they put a lot of things there. Like for example, it could be a backdoor or it could be a password or it could be API keys or a private certificate, can be anything, right? And then how do we do this? Well, basically, there there are many techniques. One is emulation. Emulation, we know what it is. You fool the firmware that it is actually inside a hardware, the manufacturer hardware, but it is not. It's in an emulating device or a software. So usually competitors do this to find out how their other person's product functions so that they can make a copy of it. Yeah, we know which country is famous for this, right? So they have actually developed this technology of emulation so good that anytime you see a mobile phone in the market, then you have a brand from that country competing with them at a very cheap price. Of course, the quality and all those things is a different story. So creation of malicious firmware image is also possible. Let's say you have a hardware device and something happened, the firmware is corrupted or something happened, you want to upgrade the firmware, but let's say the manufacturer website is down for some reason, so you go to other resources on the internet to find out the firmware, and these people, they put this firmware on the internet with some code injected in it. So where do you get this firmware? So one of the best thing about IoT hacking or IoT security is you don't need to buy the actual device. Maybe the device is 50,000 rupees or 1 lakh rupees. You don't need to spend so much money. All you have to do is know the model number of the device, go to the vendor website, go to the support section of that website or community forums there, and you can find out exact version of whatever firmware you want, right? Or there is another technique where dumping it from the device flash chip, that is possible on drastic situations, or sniffing the update mechanism, reversing mobile application or similar software reversing can be done. So what is the like technique of exploiting this IoT device? As I said you, first thing is reversing the firmware for extracting the hard coded telnet credential. This is the agenda we are going to do. We are going to take one firmware and then we are going to extract code. Which code? Telnet credentials. So yeah, how are we going to do this? Well, it involves two parts. First part is firmware extraction, and the second part is searching for vulnerabilities. So firmware extraction is done in two ways. One is static analysis by reversing a firmware, and second one is dynamic analysis by emulating the firmware. So today we are going to do the first part, that is static analysis, reversing a firmware. We are not going to do emulation of the firmware. Now static analysis is the process of reversing a firmware and searching for vulnerabilities or weaknesses present in it. Or for example, as simple as the developer is lazy enough to include a username and password in one of the files, right? So what are the tools we are going to do? These are the tools of the trade. The first tool we are going to use is called as a binwalk, and second one is a firmware modification kit, then third one firmwalk, and then fourth one is frac. Now out of these four, we are going to use the first one called as binwalk. So when you use a binwalk, you just want to reverse the firmware, that's it. Now if you want to reverse the firmware, add your own code into it, repack it again, then you are going to use something called as firmware modification kit or FMK. Okay, so what is the step we are going to use? So let me show you with practical this one. So first we'll go to the theory part and then I'll go to the practical and show you here. So here I have downloaded one firmware from D-Link manufacturer. There is a D-Link router which is actually being sold. It's still available in the market now. Okay, D-Link firmware I have downloaded from the website, and then I am going to use binwalk, the second step. Binwalk space -e. Well, basically binwalk is a Linux based tool. You can download it, you can Google search and you can download this one. -e is for extracting the firmware, and once it is extracted, we have to look at something called as a file system, the first byte of the file system. Once it is done, if you open the extracted file, this is how it will appear. It's like you're downloading a zip file, you're unzipping it, so you will have all the extracted content in it. And then once you have the extracted content, if you are able to see, almost 80% of your job is done. All you have to do is go and find your telnet credentials. Now, if there are too many folders there, then it will be really difficult for you to find out exactly telnet credentials. So our good old grip, general expression, grep, we are going to use to find out telnet command among all those files. So once you find that exact file location, then you can go and extract and see the password. That's the way we are going to do it. So let me show you. Here, this is the VM I am using here. The name of this virtual machine is Attify, ATTIFY OS 1.3. You can Google search and you can download this one, Attify OS 1.3. This is exclusively used for IoT testing. So once you download and install that stuff, so I have this firmware here download. This is the firmware. This is the name of the firmware, DIR412A1. Okay, DIR412A1. That's the firmware. Now, if you want to know exactly what is this firmware from who is the manufacturer and all that stuff, you can see here D-Link DIR 412 mobile wireless router. There it is. Well, this is the router I'm talking about. This is the router I'm talking about here. So it's a N150 router. There it is. Perfect. Once I download this, now where do I download that from? As I told you, you have to go to the D-Link website. Once you go to the D-Link website, you have to go to the support here, support, downloads. And then select your model. Ours is what is ours? 1 second. DIR412. Okay. DIR412. So in this one, download firmware. You can directly see here DIR412 firmware. You can directly download from there. Okay. So once you download that, then this is how the file would actually look like. So not a big file. It's about 3.4 MB file. So usually the firmwares will have an extension called .bin. Basically, it means a binary file. And then I will be using. I'll have to open a terminal here. I'll have to go to the. Sorry about the font size. I hope it is okay now. So where am I? Okay. Desktop. Firmware. Right. So I already have few extracted folders here, but I want to show you how it would look like. So Let me increase the size here, decrease the size here, in fact, not increasing the size. So you can see the output properly. So binwalk -e is for extract, and then dir 412.bin, then press enter. So binwalk is going to extract the firmware, and here the most important thing you will have to look at is this wording called as squash file system. Squash file system is the name of the file system usually used in this embedded devices. Like for Windows we have NTFS, and then for FAT32, which is the old one anyway. Yeah, so this is the first byte address which it has found out, and then where it has extracted this one. Well, basically once you run this command, okay, you minimize this, you go back to the folder, and then you will see here in any directory you have this squash file system folder, and this is the content of the firmware. Well, basically you are successfully done 70% of the hack. Yeah, this itself is a breakthrough. You are actually able to see the content which is hidden by the manufacturer. So looking at this file, home, mnt, mount, proc, sys, var, www, you can easily understand that this is a Linux based operating system, right? Linux based operating system. Obviously when you see www, that means it's a it may be running a HTTP or HTTPS service. Possibly it might have also some other login credentials. All we have to do is find out where are they. So let me go back, clear it up. Telnet, sorry, grep, grep hyphen telnet d. So I'm searching for that keyword called telnet daemon, which is telnet service. It's going to take some time, because depending upon the size of the number of files, the number of folders which it has to look into, and once it is done, it is going to highlight the word telnet d in its findings, and then it's up to our own common sense to understand whether it is the which file it is. Yeah, so already we are getting a fruit here. Here if you observe carefully, one second, let me increase the font size for visibility. So here you can see telnet d highlighted. So it says /l usr has been login. So when we see login, we have to jump. Why? Because we already have found out something juicy here. Okay, so here you can see /usr has been login -u alpha network. So when you see this one -u, it means it is a username. So username is alpha networks. We found it. Alpha networks is username. Well, what follows username is the password, isn't it? Okay, so I'm just going to end this because we found something, whatever we need. Just go a little bit up. Okay, now is this the password? Dollar image underscore sign hyphen iv. Well, how do you know? Well, basically if you go into the file where this telnet d keyword is found, which happens to be this one, s80 telnet d dot sh. It's a shell script. And where is the shell script? Well, it's in etc init 0.d. Here you can see etc init 0.d. Let's go there. /etc/etc. So etc init 0.d, and then what was the script name? This one, SAT telnet d sh. So I'll open this with gedit. So if you look at this with gedit, I'll try something else. 1 second. Leafpad. Yeah, so now I think you can see better using Leafpad here. I think this will overkill. 1 second. 24. Okay, much better now. Perfect. So here itself you can see telnet d, username we already know, Alpha Networks, and then followed by $image. Now anyone who has done a little bit of programming, they know that whenever there is a symbol like this, it's basically a variable. So let's see if this is declared somewhere. If you look at this, usually variables are declared on the top here. So here itself you can see image sign is equal to cat etc config image sign. That means what? There is some other file from where this variable is given input. So which is cat is used here. Cat is basically it's going to extract text whatever is there inside this image sign file. Again etc config, go back one more step here, etc config image sign. There it is. So maybe this is my password. Look at it. Yes, there it is. This is the password. Okay, so we are successfully able to find out the username and password for telnet. So we know the backdoor now. We found out a backdoor to hack into that device successfully. So that's all for today. This is how, and this is just an extract from a cybersecurity class which we actually teach at ProSeek Training Center. So you are always welcome to call the number whichever is scrolling down. You can message them. The screen might be wide. You will not be able to see the number though there. But please, you can message us even in the Facebook to get more details about the cybersecurity course which we are offering to the students as well as for the working professionals. So this course is both virtual classes and then even physical classes. So physical classes, depending upon the regulations from the government, we may start very soon physical classes. And right now at this moment we are offering virtual classes only. Please contact our team to get this awesome cybersecurity course. Enroll and please utilize the time whatever you have. Do not waste your time. Cybersecurity is the next best thing to happen throughout the decade, the next 1 decade. Okay, all right then. So next week we are going to have another session. So please keep watch our Facebook page for updates on it. So it's going to be on the Saturday, and the timing will be informed there. Usually it will be 11 o'clock always. Thank you very much for joining in. Have a nice day. Enjoy your weekend.